So welcome, Dan and Angela.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, tell our viewers a little bit about you guys, because this thing about opposites attracting is very true of you.
Sure.
So tell us.
Let me just clarify something. The only reason that we go on cruises, because those of you that are familiar with the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, you'll know that my wife's love language is quality time together.
Yes.
So that's why we have the cruising, because the only time she can pull me out of my total environment, and I'm hers only. So that's one of the reasons why, and we do it very purposefully. It's not just for us as a vacation, but it's for us as that quality time that our marriage needs and deserves. And knowing that's my wife's love language, that's one of the reasons why we do that. So I just wanted to clarify it. It's not just we're just going out there in the middle of the ocean all the time, but there's definitely a point and purpose to everything that we do in life.
Awesome.
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about the two of you. Because you haven't been married that long.
We've been married. April will be 11 years.
Okay.
You're renewing the contract.
Yeah, I tease her all the time, and I said, well, she's got to be good because April's coming forward. And I said, every April 24th, I have to decide if I'm going to renew the contract. And it's a standard joke with us because of all of us always recognize that marriage is a covenant before the Lord, and it's not a contract. It's not something that you just throw away and change what you think needs to happen. But with us, it's but that's our little joke together.
Yes, we met on Christian Mingle. I live in Sarasota, and he was a single pastor. And I'm from the Dominican Republic, third world country. And actually, it was like very different. Like everybody said, we're not gonna make it. Our wedding, from the wedding day, that our marriage was not gonna survive. 11 years ago, I was the wrong one. I wanted a green card. Maybe I was pregnant.
No, they were saying,
I was the white elephant.
The stories they were saying about her, that she needed a green card. She didn't need any of those things. When we got married, and I kind of was like more of the opinion that this is here's this nice woman. She was actually was the head of like the welcoming committee at a very large church in Sarasota. And so I had my own church, and I thought, wow, she's going to make a great pastor's wife. But the problem with that is I was looking at our marriage as she was my add-on. And I'll tell you, that's one thing, because here I'd gone to seminary, 7 years of training, gone through everything. And then, I know God, I know what God's doing, and I have it together. And then God decided to start showing me truth. How's that sound? Started showing me some truth by experiencing marriage to my I used to call her, that her nickname was the white elephant, the Latino elephant in the middle of the room. But now I changed the name, and now she's my Latino princess in the middle of the room.
Awesome. So you guys, even though like you both have a very solid faith background, within a very short time of getting married, like you were ready to call it quits, weren't you?
Exactly.
Yes, we went on the 7-day cruise, coming back to file for divorce. It was between the ex-wife, we got a blended family, and the stepchildren. My son didn't getting along. The church didn't accept me because I was Latino. It was a white people's church. Is that right to say here?
No, she likes to say.
And I didn't feel welcome. They saw I was after his money, which he was gonna file for bankruptcy at that time in the company. So I got accused of everything, and then for 3 days he told me not to talk to him. I met him on his birthday, and then he proposed to me 2 weeks later. We're looking for a ring, and then he said, "Don't talk to me because everybody was talking. She's the wrong one. You're making a mistake. She wants your company. She's not gonna be a good mom. Is she pregnant? Your mom, his mom suffered from clinical depression. Everything was my fault. His mom is depressed because he married you. And at the wedding, I didn't even have a wedding picture. I didn't know what it was having a wedding. He still owed me a wedding celebration.
We've had enough. Well, I'll put it this way: we've had plenty of honeymoons on cruises, so we're okay with that.
And yes, and all of the people that say that 230 people saying that this marriage was not gonna make it, but God, the intervention of God, the intercessor, people, my mom and my dad praying, and his parents were praying. All of the people that said that we're not going to make it, actually today they're divorced, or we're doing marriage counseling on them. I ended up in a hospital sick with water around my heart, with all the stress, because I didn't feel welcome. I felt like
we've had it was quite the beginning when we had gotten married. I had purposely, it was kind of an interesting thing. And one of the things that was important for us was when we first got married, I made the decision I told her, because there was a lot of adverse situations going between us. And so I made that decision, and I told her I needed to separate and really hear from the Lord to make sure, because we're both Christians, but I believe that you really need to make sure you're doing what God's will is and God's purpose is in your life. And so I prayed. So I didn't want any interference from anybody. And she was gracious enough to afford me to, and God basically gave me a word, and he told me, okay, he let me know. He said, this is what he said to me specifically. He said, don't judge her by what you see now, because I'm going to make her into something. Now, this is right before we got married. And then I saw, oh, okay. So I'm looking at thinking kind of like, oh, well, okay, God's going to make her into something. And then right after that, he lets me know, he says, because I didn't judge you, did I? And it kind of was right there. It's like I recognized. But I think the realization that people have to understand in marriage is, yes, I had that word from God, and we knew that God wanted us together. But yet the recognition is you come together, but there still is a lot of work through.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned, we were very opposite.
Too opposite.
Very too opposite. The standing joke between us is simply this: when we had gone to different marriage counselors, we'd gone to different situations, and we had taken a test. Actually, one session we went to, they'd given us I think it's a flag test, they called it, where it's basically to determine your compatibility with each other. And the standing joke about that is we paid good money for this test. We kept calling, asking for the results, and we were never given the results. And then, some time went by, and we asked again. We haven't got the results. And we recognize now that it was the Lord's grace and mercy, because we were so fragile in the early days of our marriage. If we really had what that test showed, because it would have come out and showed us that we were very opposite. It would have, and we would have looked at it and basically looked at each other and say, listen, I know you're a good person. I know you love the Lord, but we made a mistake, and this marriage isn't for us. And we just need to part as friends, just have this marriage annulled as quick as possible, or whatever we need to do, and move forward.
Yes, and then I start thinking, when he was in church, all the things that they were saying, everybody, his children, the ex-wife, I start running through red light, and I realized if I could just kill myself, I went suicidal. And then the psychiatry at the hospital, he realized, because I got water around my heart, all the hurt and the unforgiveness I was holding inside. I say, I'm the problem. If I would just kill myself, I would be done with. So they put me on medication, on Zoloft, and I realized even his children moved out of the house, because he was a single dad. I got my rule, he got his rule. We're so opposite.
Even in discipline, she had her son. Well, we call him our son now, but he's our middle child. She raised him and sent him to military school. Well, I kind of came from the philosophy of, I was raising my two boys primarily on my own, and I was of the philosophy, well, hey, we're all getting along fine, everything's good, everything's wonderful. So she came in with this very strict, which we literally, our son Ty needed at that time.
Yes.
And I was very more like, letting things get by. And so again, you see, there was a real polar opposite, even in our upbringing of how we did children. And they tell you, one of the things that really shows you in marriage that can be a detriment and even cause divorce is disciplining of the children.
Yes. And me working for the Department of Children and Family in Sarasota, Florida, I know the guidelines, and as a paralegal working for this attorney, I will, as a single mom, have to be very strong with my son. And I would say, no, Ty, this is the way it is. I will set the rule, and his children will do all the opposite. The church told him pretty much, hey, either you leave Angela or you cannot be our pastor.
No, they said the opposite. They actually said, I was even told to the fact that they said, listen, you're struggling with your marriage, and it's okay if you need to divorce your wife because you can still be our pastor.
Wow.
So it just kind of show you we really went, but your thing is about how opposites attract. And one of the things we realize in understanding, we've been to Tom and Bev Rogers have a great book called Soul Healing Love, and we were certified under them, and we understood some of the things. And what happens with our souls strive to be whole. All of us, whether we recognize it or not, we strive to be whole. We all want to have peace within ourselves. And whenever there's turmoil, whenever there's friction, you are going to, of course, do whatever's necessary to find peace and find balance. They say a lot of times in your soul, what happens is you will go and, like, you'll hear the proverbial part of, I'm looking for my missing part. And what you don't realize is because of what we call trauma, childhood trauma. Now, here's a statement that when I first heard it, I had to stop and think about it, because at first the initial impression was it wasn't true. And that simple statement, this is what I heard that really changed my thinking. 95% of all marital problems stem from childhood trauma. 95%. And I had to ponder that, and I thought for a while. And then you kind of think, because all of the things one of the things my wife and I, it's one thing, I've had textbook learning. Part of my degree is in counseling ministries. Of course, I have theology training, and so all these things. But when you're when you're having to live it, when you're having to put where the rubber meets the road, and these things, God's promises, and I would find that I'm married to a woman, and here's the point: we were so opposite, but yet here's the key that I want you to understand about soul healing love. Even though we were opposite, God had called us together. And the reason why is because each one of us could be the soul healer for the wounds of the other person. And people don't recognize that. And sometimes they call it quits too early. Yes, we had a test that probably would have showed us, it's a standard joke today, 10 years later. Glad thing they gave us the results of the test, because we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking. Yes, we went through literally hell on earth. Yes, we went through our kids not getting along, our kids fighting with my wife.
And leaving you. They move out of the house.
Kids left, all these things. Just to show you how our marriage was, when we got married, and as my wife said, we were really going to file for divorce after coming back from a honeymoon. It's a standing joke, but my wife had a red luggage.
Yes.
And she would tell me every day without fail, I'm packing twice a day.
Yes.
I'm packing my luggage and I'm moving back to Sarasota. Now, how does that give you hope in a marriage? Now, this is one thing I want to encourage those of you that have been married before. I am a victim of, or I don't like to use the word victim, but I had a failed marriage for various reasons. Part my own because of not understanding what love is. Part my ex's because of falling in love with somebody else. My wife had a tragic marriage. And here's the thing that happens in relationships. Whenever you've been through what we term as divorce, and it's so wrenching, it's very traumatic. And they say that actually the pain that you feel in a divorce is the same level of anxiety and pain that you have in a death. And sometimes it's even more, because literally it's not like the person's gone. It's literally now you're having to deal with this person. And especially if you have young children together, you're having to, deal whether you like it or not. So we had all these scenarios going on, and it's really easy to take the easy way out. It was easy for my wife to say, you know what, I don't need this. It was easy to say for me, you know what, I've already been divorced once. I'm already marked. Hey, what's another divorce? And I just want to encourage anybody out there that maybe you're feeling like you're opposite. Maybe you're feeling like there's a lot of trauma between you. I want to encourage you that God gave us the staying power. He gave us the ability to hang in there. And I tell you, this is one of the biggest truths I've learned, is I recognize in my understanding that my wife is not just my wife. This is God's daughter. She has a Heavenly Father, the same Heavenly Father I do. This is God's precious daughter. And when I changed my mentality and my thought to this is God's daughter, it really changed the way. So instead of like emphasizing all the opposites, coming to the grips and the understanding that opposites do attract. I mean, it's understanding, how does a magnet work? You know, you don't have both positive sides of a magnet sticking to each other. They don't stick. But when there's that opposite, a lot of times you're drawn to each other. And sometimes, you know, I was drawn to my wife because she had traits that I didn't have. I have traits that she doesn't have. And honestly, we've come to the realization probably more recently of how many traits that we each have that we admire that the other doesn't have, and vice versa. And it's so interesting to see how the Lord has brought us together. And one of the things that I've come to the understanding of is the covenant principle. When I understood that this is God's daughter, and even though we were, in my estimation, opposites, and even though everything inside of me wanted to run away, I said, you know, this is God gave me, and I was strong enough to say, God gave me a word, and this was going to be my wife, and I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight for this relationship.
Yes, and the most beautiful part, God is so good that He will make me coffee every day for the last 10 years. And even when I didn't deserve it, He will make me coffee. I was so mean to him because when people will treat me bad, and his ex-wife, I will make him pay for it. He became a punching bag. His children, they would call me a BIT on Facebook in front of like 5,000 people. And I will go back to him and make him pay for it every time. And through the soul healing seminar and going through different seminars, I learned to communicate with him. Honey, it's not you, it's me. Your ex-wife just called, or your son called me a B, and this person did this. So communication, it helped me so much, and his my weakness are his strengths, and his weakness are my strength, and that's what really, really helped us.
One of the truths of understanding soul healing when you go through trauma, my wife had gone through it. Now, I didn't recognize it at this time, but I was being obedient to what the Lord had told me to do. She had gone and she was used to people leaving. She was used to people feeling that she wasn't good enough. She didn't matter. Nobody's listening to her. And everybody that she felt that maybe she would try to put trust and dependence on would always end up, something would happen, and there would be my wife is, you know, unfortunately in her previous marriage, there was a infidelity. There was an affair that happened. And, you know, knowing all this, I didn't fully understand, but what I had to do, and the Lord worked it through us, is I had to show her an unconditional act of love every day. And my wife mentioned about the coffee, and that's kind of our story. I learned in when we first got married, it's a little joke between us. Now, my wife, making coffee for my wife wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do. It required mixing 2 different types of coffee together and mixing 2 types of cream together. So it was a science. Literally, it was a science. And I would do this every day before I went for work. My princess, that's what I call her now.
Another elephant.
My princess would just come down the staircase, descend the stairs, and go over to the coffee maker and push the button. And everything was set, and she poured it in the cup. And I didn't realize, but I did this consistently. And we would have times, I'm telling you, we had knockdown dragouts. We had times where literally my joke was I would sleep sometimes. I said I'd sleep in the bed like this with one eye open.
Yes.
The old story of Bobbit. So I was got a little scared. So I said
I would be breaking flowers.
So she would be, I mean, she would literally, I mean, I'd send her flowers, and she'd look at me right in front of me and take the vase and just throw it right on the floor, break it in pieces, and just, I mean, in this anger. But what I didn't realize is even when we would have those situations, every morning I would still consistently make the coffee for her. One morning, I'll never forget this, I decided that, you know, the night before was too much. She didn't deserve coffee. That's, you know, this is me. She doesn't deserve it. Because, you know, I don't know why I'm putting up with this woman. She's so opposite of me. She's just, you know, and so I decided, so I'm walking outside go and get in my vehicle. I grabbed the handle to my vehicle, and those of you, now it wasn't an audible voice from the Lord, but those of you that are born again believers, you know when God's talking to you. It might as well have been an audible voice. All of a sudden, I grabbed the handle of my vehicle, and I hear this, "What are you doing?" And you know, have you ever had these conversations with God that you play stupid? And I said to myself, I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm going to work. That's what I'm supposed to do." And the Lord just so gently nudged me and said, "What did you forget to do?" And I stopped for a moment, and it was like one of those, like, how you like, you grimace and you clench your fist. And I turned around, walked back in the house, and made that coffee faithfully. And now this is what I did, and I did it consistently. Now I want to tell you, I just did it out of obedience, because as far as I was concerned, this woman didn't show me any love. She was mean to me. She was everything else, but she's gonna tell you what her side of the coffee was.
My side of the coffee is like, wow, just like Jesus, he died on the cross for me, a wreck like me, amazing grace, just like, even when I don't deserve it, still Jesus loved me. And this man loved me when I don't deserve it, because I was comparing him to my ex-husband, like, go ahead and leave. My ex-husband took me to the cleaner. He took my house, my possession, everything, even my 401k. All I needed, all I kept was my son and my relationship with Jesus. And when I was pregnant, he even beat me up, and I was in a coma for 3 days. My water broke being pregnant. So I'm like, go ahead. I'm used to this. Go ahead and leave. And when he made me coffee, a stable coffee every day, even when I didn't deserve it, I was like, wow, God, you're real. You really put us together. And in the time that I just want to like drive away, and somebody told us, you guys should go to a marriage seminar. And I'm like, a marriage seminar? What are you talking about? You insulted me. We got a perfect marriage.
Everybody always has the perfect marriage when somebody asks you.
Yeah, we got a perfect marriage on Facebook, the beautiful pictures, smiling, and the perfect family, even though we're killing each other. But we finally met, and we went to this marriage counseling, and she would get on my face, and I walk out of that marriage counseling like 7 times. And in one, I walk away, and I outside waiting on him to come and get me. 30 minutes go by, and he didn't get me.
I was the typical rescuer.
Yeah, I'm thinking he doesn't care, just like my ex, left him for another woman, get my house, my credit score. I was homeless. It was like 400, my credit score. I guess this is over. That's it. One more. Next. What's next? And the easiest way for me was going suicidal so many times. So I just go through the Skyway Bridge in Sarasota on the way to Sarasota and kill myself. And the problem, his children will move back home because they all left, and everybody will be happy because I'm the problem. And we're so opposite. Even when the kids will come home, I got my rules, and he's the easy guy.
And one of the things that we wanted to mention is we talked in our backgrounds, and it's rather interesting because we both in some ways had the same kind of wound.
Yes.
And I grew up with I would call it was an absentee father. That I grew up, he went to school 12 years at night, so I really didn't have any relationship with him at that juncture. He was a strong disciplinarian, the type of person that literally, the statement was made, if I hear another noise, I'm going to come in there swinging. And what swinging meant was I never seen somebody take a belt off as quick as he can, and everybody in the room got swatted with the belt. And it didn't matter who was guilty. And I was raised in that kind of a strict, and even my mother, if we weren't listening to her, she would, we were always threatened by our father. And, wait, I'm going to tell your father when he gets home. And that's the kind of upbringing, my father was. And then we come to the understanding, my wife, you want to tell them about your mother?
Yeah, with my mom, she was like a dictator. Like, you got to do it this way. I'm telling your dad when you get home. I never saw my dad work like 50, 60 hours. And we moved every year, but I didn't realize my dad was having different wife affairs in Dominican Republic, being married to my mom. He got this. Every year we move, so I never had any friends. It if I play piano, she would go, oh, good job. If I make a B, oh, when did your father get home? So my dad never said, I love you. I don't know what love was. He would never hug me or kiss me other than, your mom told me you made bad grades, so you're a bad child. What happened? You're supposed to make 100. We don't accept bad grades in this house. So I start feeling that I was never good enough. And my husband is very careful. We learned this tool how he speak to me because, oh, it's not good enough.
Right.
Always focusing in the leader scene. But my mom was like a dictator, just like his father.
When you
so
don't
I
have
attract to
when you don't have the unconditional love growing up like you should, that basically is a soul wound. It really is, and it affects you. And recognizing my wife didn't get, it's always was performance based. Yeah, I was the good child as long as I did the right thing, and my wife was the good child as long as she did the right thing. And those are what they call soul wounds within you. And those soul wounds you carry into your marriage, where it's literally you have a relationship that's more based on performance. Well, my wife loves me if she does this, 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 and this.
Mhm.
And, then she could say, well, my husband loves me this, this, and this. And that's why, the Lord in his great wisdom, having me do that cup of coffee for her was a love act that showed that it didn't matter what she did. She didn't have to perform. It didn't matter if she was the worst person the night before. What I was doing is showing her unconditional love. And the Lord used me in her life to show her that, because it brought stability. Because one thing about us is I'm I'm the kind of person that I laugh at. I am a pastor, and if I'm not on a platform, I'm very content to sit on the back row in a church. That's just how I am. My wife, on the other hand, if we come to a church, even if we're visiting, she is walking down the center aisle and finding the closest seat she can in the front row. She's always out there, and I'm not. And I mean, but she's the one that pushes me and keeps. She's like the fire that keeps me pushed. But at the same time, the train would derail if I wasn't the stable influence that keeps our marriage and our life and our ministry balanced.
Yes,
So,
and I'm a people person. Like, I'm always, hey, we got an Airbnb, the BRBO, come to Sarasota. Oh, you having problem in your marriage? Oh, come on, meet with us. We're gonna do a session.
Yeah.
Oh, we do your wedding. We do.
She's always volunteering me for everything.
So I want to pick up on something that you said about the
Yes.
soul wounds,
Yes.
because both of you actually had similar soul wounds.
Correct.
Is that part of what attracted you to each other, even though you weren't aware of it?
Yeah, it does, because what happens is when you have a wound, it can take manifest in different ways. Like sometimes you'll have people, they might be wounded, the same type of wound, and one of the people might be, for example, be more like a solo person, more like kind of drawn back within themselves because of that, and yet the other person would probably well, they've had that same kind of thing, but they're more expressive, and they're more like, well, no, I'm gonna party, I'm gonna be with all these friends. And you try to look for, believe it or not, you're looking for what you seem to be lacking in yourself. And we find that a lot of times in a soul wound is you look, for example, for me as a pastor, it was very blatant. Yes. I'm looking for the outgoing woman that, oh man, she's outgoing. And in my mind, of course, remember, she's my add-on. She's not my equal, not my walk beside, but she's my add-on. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great because she's going to get all these people in the church, and the church is going to grow, and it's going to be great. And so I'm looking at her that way. And she, and of course, she's just kind of looking for, she saw me and she thought at least that, well, this guy seems to be kind of all right. He seems to be kind of stale. He seems to be very consistent. And we looked at each other, and here's the crazy thing about a soul wound. What you find that really attracts you to the person will end up being what drives you crazy. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, well, oh, this is this great woman, and I'm thinking, and she's out there. Well, then I realized she's just out there, and she's out there, and she's all the time with everybody, and she's all the time with this and this and this. And I'm feeling like, okay, well, I'm just second best. I'm not part of her life because it's all about her and her friends and everything she's doing.
Yes, but at the meantime, I was also looking at his past because the seminar we went to, his dad always put him down. He could never measure up, just like my dad, opposite attract, the same story, the same soul wound, and I'm his cheerleader. I'm always lifting him up and pushing him. Come on, honey. Oh, we're going on a cruise. We're doing this. We're doing that.
She mentioned that cruise word again. You heard it, right?
Yeah, I'm always making plans. Like, okay, come on, let's get the house clean. Let's do this. Let's do that. Always pushing him. People see in church say, "Oh, you're his cheerleader," and you're always like making him like always lifting him up because I'm doing all the opposite that his dad did. His dad always say, "You're not good enough," and I'm like, "No, you're good enough." Actually, that even the jealousy came in because I start feeling like, "Oh, this girl is looking at you." Say, Angela, you're the only one that look at me with those eyes, like the baby blue eyes.
Oh,
he's so good looking.
She thinks,
so
and I'm thinking,
handsome.
I'm looking around, thinking who she's talking to. I'm like, one of the things that's really you understand with soul wounds is there are certain. This is how let me just explain. I'm going to regress for a second here. What your soul does is, whether you realize it or not, your soul records everything. All the emotional events of your life, all the history of your life, all the positives, all the negatives, anything that's tied into you emotionally. And a lot of it is stored not in your conscious mind, but in your subconscious mind. So that's why in your formidable ages, like they say, even up to age 7, it's very critical in what you receive. And even it's not just if you receive something negative, but a lot of the problem is it's what you don't receive. In my situation, for example, I didn't receive unconditional love. It was more of, I'm trying to please, but then I didn't know how to please. I didn't know who this man was. I just knew this man would come home, and if I did something wrong, I was going to get hit. And that's kind of where a soul wound comes from. And whether you realize it or not, a lot of it's buried in your subconscious. And a lot of times people, it's a hurting, it's an emotional hurt, and very seldom you can always tell if I'm talking to a person, or my wife and I are coaching, and when you talk and we'll say, tell us about something, and a lot of times people don't remember because your body is designed to protect you. And when you have a very hard traumatic thing happen to you, literally something will happen to the degree that you block it and you don't remember it. Some years ago, I had a case when I was pastoring, that a woman had come into the office and she basically had been through a rape. And of course, that's a very emotionally devastating thing for a woman. But she didn't remember any of it because literally the trauma was so strong in her that she had blocked it totally out. And yet, she had gone to some, I had given her some things to read, and she'd gone and gotten some counseling. And it was probably 6 months, maybe a year later, she was actually getting healed. She was reliving it where, the tears were flowing. In the experience, because your body your mind, not just your body, but your mind will actually block out something that's so painful. But the problem is, it goes back to the old adage we've heard before: feelings buried alive never die. And whether I realize or not, if I don't deal with the soul wound deep inside of me, it's going to surface someplace else. So what happened was, even though we were opposites, the wounds that we had, we were attracted to each other. And really, it was a God thing that we were attracted to each other, because we can see it now, but we didn't see it 10 years ago. But what happens is you go through that, and you have that healing that you have to experience. And one of the things my wife and I have learned, there are certain catchwords. There are things that I didn't realize, and we've never. Let me tell you this. Let me just encourage all marriages. You never arrive. We definitely purpose. Now, we've been involved in, getting training. We've been involved in a lot of seminars. We've gone to things, but we purposely still do it. In fact, even I think it was 2 weeks ago, might have been 3 weeks ago, we went to the couple that had started and mentored us 10 years ago and helped our marriage. And they worked with us, and it brought up something inside of us from years ago that we didn't even recognize.
4 hours, yeah.
2 hours with her, 2 hours with me, and it's just a soul wound. But what we found out is, I didn't realize, because we were having an issue, but me saying a simple phrase is, I've got to go to work. Now, if you hear me say that, is there anything wrong with that phrase? No. I got to go to work. Well, that's a natural, normal thing. People go to work. But what I didn't realize when I said those words, it was triggering an emotional wound in my wife. And believe it or not, I was hurting her emotionally every time I said that, because it was bringing back a soul wound with her father, who would use the excuse he was going to work when he was going to have an affair.
Yes.
Wow. Huh. Yeah. So, Dan, Angela, like this has been like phenomenal. What you shared about soul wounds and the attraction that happens and so on. So, you talked a little bit about the training that you've taken that helps, couples,
Yes.
to identify those soul wounds, to go back and get the healing. All right. And so that's something that that you've been doing.
Correct. Yeah, we've done it, and we've done it with my wife. We've done it with some couples. My wife has actually been able even to do it with some of her own family members.
Yes, my
very
mom.
successfully. Just because if you have the relationship and you're getting people to be willing, and I would encourage people, you have to really be willing. My point is, I want to make sure that I need to be Jesus to my wife. I need to be Jesus. I need to be the hands and feet and the voice of Jesus. Because remember what I said, I started when we first started talking, this isn't just my wife. This is God's daughter. I've been entrusted with a sacred duty of taking care of and nurturing and providing for God's daughter. And when you look at that perspective, it really changes.
Yeah, it does. And this childhood trauma is so important for lady, if you're listening, to address and to work on it. Because with my mom, she was a sex slave at the age of 14. So this millionaire guy told my grandpa, hey, give me your daughter and I give you a 7-bedroom house. I give you the deed to the house. And that's what happened to my mom. So with me, I didn't knew the story until like 10 years ago. So when I got sick and taking Zoloft, I lost all my sexual desires. So being in the hospital, I want to see if my husband was going to leave me, just like my dad left my mom, not having sex for 3 months. So I'm like, oh, he's just here. So with the water around my heart, I got really sick. I got really ill. So he couldn't touch me or anything, but he was washing my hair. He was taking care of me. And I will still wonder, like, he's just here. And because it brought me back to my childhood trauma from my mom. She was a beautiful woman, but she was sexually molested by this millionaire pervert. There's another word to say, but communicating with my husband how I feel. He always give me the password for his cell phone. He give me the password for the email. Not that I don't trust him, but even in this condominium that we are right now, he will put the title on both names because he wants to make sure that he's not going anywhere, that he's the real deal, and I love you, I'm here for you. Even though you cannot have sex with me, you're not a sex slave like your mom, you're not a sex object because of the outside, and looking at your heart. So even when we met on Christian Mingle, I show up with the turtleneck. I didn't want him to see any part of my chest or my eyes, or my hair was up, and I was like covering every part of my body because I want him to love me for who I am on the inside.
It was really interesting when you meet a woman for the first time and she's in a black turtleneck up to here. She has black pants on. And on top of that, she has a black, I guess, trench
leather coat, because
trench coat. I call it trench coat. I'm looking there. I'm looking next to see if her fingernails are painted black.
No,
I'm like, Lord, what am I getting into?
But I want to make sure that he's gonna fall in love with who I am. Yeah. Not like with my mom feeling used.
Wow. We're getting some good feedback on what you guys are sharing. That's people say, I love your story. There's many connecting triggers. And so I know that we could have you talk for hours, because there's a lot of nuggets that you're letting out. But just so we know that if people want to get a hold of you and want to pursue this conversation further, and of course you're willing to talk to folks who
sure.
Yes.
Who feel like what that soul wound stuff, I can relate to that. that opposite said, like, now I know why I was attracted to my husband, ex-husband, whatever the case may be. And so for them to continue the conversation with you, we want to facilitate that. And so is it okay if we show everybody your Facebook?
Oh, sure. Yes, that'll be fine.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how you can connect with Dan and Angela. That's their Facebook name. And so send them a message, and just say, hey, what you shared the other day really resonated with me, whatever. So give them some feedback directly. And if you feel like you need some additional help, that's what their training is. And I picked up that book, the Soul Healing Love book, after we talked to Dan and Angela, and man, it was an eye opener for me. Some of the things that are in there, and these guys embody that. They
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The book, but they also know how to use that stuff to get other people free and get healed, right? And then healing in your soul. If you really want to move ahead, because
the thing about it is we appreciate you both, because there is not, we recognize that the strength of any church really is in the couples and in solid marriages, and the strength of anything, because that's the first union God established together, is marriages. And we so appreciate, people like you that have like-mindedness, that want to help couples. Our story, we just share our story. It's not that, and the thing about it is we share the good, the bad, and the ugly. and because of that, it helps, because I've dealt with people, because I do come from a perspective of being a pastor. I no longer have my own church, because we actually have joined in with serving in another church, because it helps me free my time for marriage ministry and things that God has us doing. But the thing about it is I come from that perspective, and too many people have the idea that when I get saved or when I become a Christian, oh, it's good and everything's fine, and my wife's a Christian and I'm a Christian and we both love Jesus and we're going to go down the road and live happily ever after. And it doesn't work that way, because we're both two unique people that God's created, and He's forming us into one. And here's the beautiful thing: I am a better person. I'm a better person. Every aspect of my life is better because God put this wonderful woman at my side. And without that, I would go on life thinking that I had it all together and I was the one and I knew what was truth. But God said, you know what? I love you enough to show you how you're missing it. How's that sound?
Well, this has been amazing. So we're coming. We normally, say we're going to go for 45 minutes, and so we've gone a little bit over that because the stuff that you're sharing is so incredible that we didn't want to get in the way. And so, friends, there's lots more of what Dan and Angela shared with us. That
I was going to say maybe we can bring them back another time.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll definitely have you guys.
More than willing to come back. Listen, we are, when we can team up together with partners like you, and just because we have the same heart, the same drive to help marriages, that's, we're more than willing to be in this together and help whoever we can help.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again. So if you joined us late, or if you never watched us before, this is who we are. We're marriage mentors, Jeeva and Sulojana Sam. And Sulojana, what do we do?
I mentioned at the beginning. Yeah, we mentor couples who are on the verge of breakdown to breakthrough in as little as 10 weeks, guaranteed. Okay.
Yeah. So if there's some way that we can help, and we're all Dan, Angela, Jeeva and Sulojana. There are other ministries. God's called us to minister to married couples, but we all do it, in a different way.
Yes.
But because not all of us can reach everybody, and that's the beauty of of being part of the body of Christ, is the diversity. And so if there's some way that that we can help, or if you guys missed the contact information for Dan and Angela and you want to connect with them, just get a hold of us, and we'll be glad to connect you with them. We're not in competition with each other.
Yeah.
We're all co-laboring together.
Amen.
Make sure that marriage today, is the way that God envisioned marriage to be way back when, when he brought Adam and Eve together in the Garden of Eden. So thanks for joining us. We will do this again next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Sulojana, you want to say something?
Yeah, we'll get them to pray.
Yeah. So yeah, before we leave, we will have Dan and Angela pray over everybody.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're more than glad to.
Yeah.
I always tell people that are listening, I said, just grab your spouse by the hand, and we just believe that, and we're going to pray together. Father, I just thank you for every person, every marriage that's listening. Father, I thank you that my wife and I have a motto: if you can do it for us, you can do it for others.
Mm-hmm.
And Father, I'm just speaking hope and life to every marriage out there. Father, if they feel they're on the edge, Father, I thank you that you're on the edge with them, and you're going to encourage them. You're going to bring health back to that marriage. So we just speak life to marriages right now. We pray, Lord, where the enemy thinks there's no way and there's no hope, because we've been there. Father, I thank you when it was just felt like we needed to give up. You were so incredible, Lord, to step in just the time we needed you. So we just speak love and blessing and commitment over each and every marriage, and ask you to do for them what you've done for us. And we thank you now for the Sams. Thank you for their ministry. And we ask that you continue to, Lord, to let this light spread to others. And as always, we give you the praise in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you
so
so much,
much.
guys.
God bless you
God
guys.
bless you guys.
Bye-bye.